Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and we are back with this sixth installment in the Bad Teacher series. And today, I've got a rapid fire, just a mass amount of bad teachers that I'm going to cover. Some really crazy cases. We've got 4 different bad teachers we are covering today, and these are pretty shocking. With several of these teachers today, you would have never believed these particular teachers would have done the things that I'm going to tell you about. Now, in so many of these cases, when these teachers are caught, most people say in interviews, etc., that they never would have thought, or they are so surprised. And this group right here is no exception, to be sure. So let's jump right into it. And the first teacher that we're going to discuss is a teacher by the name of Cassidy Kraus. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Cassidy Kraus, and we'll start out with where she attended high school, which was the same school district, incidentally, where years later she would get into a lot of trouble. And that was I.K. Manning High School in Manning, Iowa. And Cassidy Kraus, she was a cross-country track star in that high school. She had set a bunch of records. Now, interestingly, at the time, she was known as Cassie Branning. I'm not sure why the name change, but there you have it. Now, after high school, Cassidy attended and graduated from Iowa State University, and she shined in college. This was not a stupid girl. A lot of brain power in this one. And she made the dean's list, as a matter of fact, several times throughout her college years, majoring in education. And physically, she was a beauty. Like, seemingly most of the ladies we cover. And incidentally, she was also on the younger side of those that we cover as it relates to her age at her time of her arrest, which we're going to cover right now. So life seemed to be moving along fine for Cassidy in August of 2023. She had just got married in July, as a matter of fact, July 1st of that year, and she was teaching a reading class at the middle school in the Manning School District. Then everything changes when in August of 2023, a report was made in the Manning School District saying Kraus was sending inappropriate photos of a sexual nature to students. The school district, they put Kraus on leave and an investigation is started. And it was on August 25th of 2023 that Kraus resigns from that school. And 3 days later, on August 28th of 2023, her husband, who I'm sure is totally shocked by all of this, he files for divorce after just 54 days of marriage. So during the investigation, as I mentioned, it's discovered that Kraus sent what is deemed at the time to be inappropriate photos. Now, she was sending these photos through Snapchat, and this was on or around May of 2023. And the police, they find this information, and of course, they continue investigating as they find things. And after several months pass, they put together a case, and they get a warrant issued for the arrest of Cassidy Sue Kraus. This is on October 20th of 2023. And the charges included the following: 2 counts of lewd and lascivious acts with a child, fondling or touching, and 3 counts of dissemination and exhibition of obscene materials to minors. So, according to the arrest warrant, there were 3 alleged victims, and with regard to the dissemination of obscene materials, the warrant claimed that Kraus allegedly knowingly disseminated obscene material to victim number 1. This was between January of 2022 and May of 2022. and also disseminated obscene material to victims 2 and 3 between January of 2023 and June of 2023, each time using Snapchat. Additionally, according to investigators, the suspect's conduct did not just occur on an app. Kraus is accused of committing lascivious acts against a 13-year-old in May of 2022 by fondling or touching the victim and causing the, quote, touching of the person's genitals to any part of the body of the child. Now, the complaint also noted that Kraus is a mandatory reporter of child abuse as a teacher employed by the Manning Community School District. So, with that, why they noted that is they're proving without a shadow of a doubt that she knew better. Now, Kraus is then further accused of committing third-degree sexual abuse of a 14-year-old between January 17th and January 31st of 2023 by performing sexual acts while again being a mandatory reporter of child abuse. Now, while the disseminating obscene materials counts are classified as serious, they are misdemeanors. However, the lascivious acts and the third-degree sexual abuse charges, those are felonies, Class C felonies, and they're typically punishable by not more than 10 years under Iowa law if the accused is a first-time offender, as was the case here. So Cassidy, she is in what you would call a world of shit at this time, as she should have been, were these charges true. And she gets arrested and has a bond hearing, and she does post a $10,000 bond the morning of her arrest. So she was prepared for this. Now, we're going to get into what happened with this case, which, look, on most of the episodes, the thing I harp on the most is the light sentences that these female teachers, especially, get handed down from the court. But I'll tell you, this is not one of them. I'll get into that, but I wanted to give you some details of some of the things that occurred. And we know this now because after this teacher was sentenced, a lawsuit was filed against the school district by the parents of one of the youths, and they sued for negligence. So listen to the allegations here. Now, the lawsuit alleges that in the spring of 2022, while a youth was a 7th grade student at IKM Middle School, 22-year-old Cassidy Kraus was working at the school as a student teacher. In May of 2022, school officials allegedly observed a scantily clad Kraus dressed in a sports bra and shorts playing sports with some of the students, including this particular youth. The lawsuit alleged that while school officials found Kraus's conduct to be inappropriate, they took no action. Now, if you will look at the artwork for this episode, Cassidy Kraus, you'll see her on the front of that artwork. And if you're a Patreon member, I upload pictures of the people that I talk about. But if you're not, you can look at the artwork on the cover of this episode, and you'll see a girl sitting there, and she's actually in between the legs of the guy that she married, and then later he filed for divorce 59 days later or something like that. But she has on a Iowa State crop top. So you can see what this girl looks like, because it's important here. I want you to imagine, if you will, a 7th grade student, 8th grade student. Look, guys, at that time, we have discovered girls and our hormones are raging, and it gets even worse when we're in high school. But you've got a teacher that looks like that running around in a sports bra playing with students. Imagine that. So we'll continue on. 1 month later, Rose's mother allegedly discovered Kraus was sending messages to her son via the Snapchat messaging app. She instructed her son to block Kraus and reported the matter to school officials, according to this lawsuit. So they knew. At this point, they have seen her running around the sports bra, and they take no action. And they get a report from a mother saying this chick is talking to my son on Snapchat. They still don't do anything about it, allegedly. Then in August of 2022, Kraus becomes a full-time teacher at the middle school. So not only do they not say anything to her about it, they promote her during all this. Crazy. During the fall semester, the lawsuit alleges Kraus began pulling the student, then 13 years old, into her classroom during the school day, where she kissed him and groped him. In October, this student's mother allegedly sent an email to a school guidance counselor about concerns that Kraus was having a sexually explicit conversation with students, including her son. And according to the lawsuit, the counselor indicated she would inform administrators. I mean, you could not shine a bigger light on this teacher, right? The school is alleged to have taken no action in the matter, and in November of 2022, Kraus allegedly solicited a sexual encounter with this same youth, according to the lawsuit. Over the next 4 months, the lawsuit alleged the two had sex on numerous occasions. Then in March of 2023, Kraus allegedly began sending sexually explicit photos to the youth, who had recently turned 14, and other students. 5 months later, district officials learned of the photos and initiated an investigation. Now, this tells me that most of this bullshit could have been avoided. But it appears now, if these allegations are true, that the school turned a blind eye to it. You've got a teacher out there, a very cute teacher, in a sports bra playing with students. Come on. Parents alerted the school several times and still nothing is done. And the chick is promoted to a full-time teacher. Blows my mind. So let's get into the sentencing. And there was no trial because Kraus pleaded guilty, which shocked me in this instance, and I'll tell you why. There was no deal apparently offered to her. And on March 11th of 2024, Kraus appears in court for her sentencing, and she is sentenced to the maximum. She gets 33 years in prison, as well as a $5,400 fine. And after she finally gets out of prison, she will be required to register as a sex offender for life. I mean, why take a plea? I'm not saying she didn't deserve the sentence, but you just never see this. So this beautiful young lady, barely 24, at the time of her sentence, has completely ruined her life over dumb shit. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Just got married. So let's move on to our next case, which we're going to bring you to Missouri, and I'm going to tell you about a teacher by the name of Kristen Kirker. So this Benton, Missouri teacher and mother of a 3-year-old daughter, incidentally, she gets arrested on November 3rd of 2023. And here are the allegations according to the probable cause affidavit. An officer with the Scott County Sheriff's Office, he gets a call from the principal of a school, and that principal says a teacher/teacher's aide by the name of Kristen Kirker may be having sex with a student. So the officer, of course, he meets with that principal and the step-parent of who we're going to refer to as victim number 1. And the step-parent explains that victim number 1 told her the day before that he had sex with Kirker in the bedroom of his home, saying it took place at the end of the prior school year in 2023. So the officer gets this info and he says, well, I need to talk to victim number 1. And in the interview, victim number 1 said that during baseball season the prior year, Miss Kirker walked up to him and asked him for his phone number. He gives it to her, and the two, they begin exchanging text over the course of some time. And these exchanges eventually become sexual in nature, and sexually explicit photos are sent back and forth. According to victim number one, Miss Kirker sends pictures of her breast and quote unquote booty pictures. Victim number one also stated he would respond to the pictures with pictures of his penis. So from March to May of 2023, victim number one stated that he went into Miss Kirker's classroom, during which time the main teacher, remember Miss Kirker was an aide, so the main teacher leaves the room to go somewhere, and the victim said he asked Miss Kirker for a blowjob, which, according to him, she obliged in the classroom. On another occasion, Miss Kirker texted victim number one and asked him if his parents were home at the time. He said they were not home, and she asked if she could come by his house, which he agrees to. And she goes over, and they go to his bedroom, and Kirker performs oral sex on victim number one, and then lays in the bed, climbs on top of him, and they have sexual intercourse in his bed. So what do you think would happen at this point? Well, the police, they want to speak to Miss Kirker, right, about all this. So they go to the school and they retrieve Miss Kirker. And they say, we want you to come with us down to the station. She agrees, and she actually follows them in her own vehicle back to the sheriff's office for her own interview. And in that interview, she admits that from March to May of 2023, that she and the student began texting, which did lead to the exchange of nude photos. She then admits to performing oral sex on the victim in that classroom. She even admitted to and confirmed having sex at his house in his bed. So on November 8th of 2023, she's arrested on 2 counts of felony sexual conduct with a student, and she's held with no bond. And get this, the case is still tied up in court. Over a year after she's been arrested, and no one's covering it outside of an August 2nd appearance in court, which I was able to locate online. There is simply no more information. This case is still dragging on, even though this woman has admitted to everything, as I just told you. But it gets even more shocking. That's not where it stops for this Scott County, Missouri school, because believe it or not, just a few days after Kirker's arrest, a special education teacher from the same fucking school by the name of Lindsay Limbaugh, who is 38 years old, she gets arrested. And according to the probable cause affidavit, the school district contacted police after the teacher made contact with the school's superintendent. Let me say that again. The teacher made contact with the school superintendent to advise him that in May of 2023, she had a sexual relationship with a student. You heard me right. She told on herself. So this superintendent reports this, and detectives, they say, well, we've got to go talk to Miss Limbaugh. They go to her home, and Limbaugh admits that she had sex with a former student twice during a relationship that began in April of 2023 at a Lil Wayne concert. So she stated that while she was intoxicated at the concert, she contacted the student via TikTok. They reportedly started messaging back and forth over the next few weeks. And in early May, Limbaugh told police the student drove her to what was known as Benton's Car Wash, where the two began making out. The male student fondled her right breast until she told him to stop. Now, this account was corroborated in a later interview with the victim and his father. On another occasion, the male student put his hands down the back of her pants while they kissed on a class field trip to an area park. The victim corroborated that story as well, adding that he and Limbaugh had also excused themselves to a men's bathroom, made out again, and touched each other's genitals. At a later date, the student and Limbaugh both recalled the student visited Limbaugh's home, where he gave her money to buy stickers for his truck, and the two had oral sex. The student, but not Limbaugh, told the detective they had consensual intercourse at that meeting. Now, after the student graduated, both parties said Limbaugh visited the student's house where the two had consensual intercourse. So let me shed some light on this. The student said, while I was in high school, we had intercourse at my house after I gave her some money to buy some stickers for my truck. She denied that, and there's a key reason, I think, why she would deny that, and that's because he was still in high school, and that's a charge that she's going to catch. However, she did admit they had consensual sex after he graduated from high school. Well, he says it happened on both occasions. It's a really strange story so far because she's the one who alerted everybody to this. She had her own little confession. He didn't tell, she told. But regardless of that, guess what? In this case, it's the same as the first. As I just told you, she admitted to these crimes. Hell, she's the one who told on herself. And this case is still tied up in the legal system. Freaking mind-blowing to me. What is up with this school in particular? Now, it's not so out of the norm that something like this will happen at a school, and as investigators dig in, they find out another teacher is doing some things they shouldn't be doing. That's maybe not that common, but in both cases, these people are admitting to this, and neither one of these cases have been closed, and it's been over a fucking year. The wheels of justice should not turn that slow. But we'll move on, and we'll go to my state, Louisiana. And I'm going to tell you about 32-year-old Tatum Hatch. So Tatum was a teacher at West Monroe High School, which West Monroe, y'all, is in North Louisiana. It's in what is known as a Ouachita Parish. And Tatum, 32 years old, very attractive, well put together woman. And life seemed to be good for Tatum. That is until January 3rd of 2024, when an affidavit for her arrest was issued. And according to that affidavit, an Ouachita Parish Sheriff's deputy, he gets contacted in reference to a student claiming that he was in an inappropriate relationship with Hatch. The officer then contacts the 15-year-old student's father, and the father tells the officer that his son told him the relationship had been going on for a year and a half. Now, the father had just found out about it, but this had been an ongoing thing, according to this student. He said that his son showed him an Instagram thread that was backing up his son's claims. Apparently, it referenced the relationship, and it was messages going back and forth in Instagram between Tatum and this 15-year-old. So the officer, he meets with the student, and the student agrees to allow the officer to go through his cell phone. And the officer observes an Instagram message where Hatch actually details the fact that, and I'm quoting Hatch directly, here where she says to the 15-year-old student, quote, "I want you to know that I want you to fuck me," unquote. Right there in black and white, the officer sees this. Now, later in the thread, Hatch tells the victim that she wants him to come over and go through her bedroom window and asks the student if he was going to be rough or gentle with her. The student responds by asking her, "Well, what do you want?" And she tells him she doesn't know, but that she has definitely thought about it. She then asked the student if he was going to take her clothes off and if she can take his clothes off. The student tells Hatch he's scared, and she replies that she is too, stating that she is worried the student may find someone else to, quote, "be his first." So the officer observes several other conversations that took place over several months, including one in which an after-school function is had, and Hatch, she's trying to coerce the victim to go sit with her. So she texts him, "Aren't you going to come sit with me? I'm sitting over here." And she's kind of descriptive about where she's sitting. And the officer actually gets with school officials and come to find out that is where she was sitting. So this officer knows this ain't bullshit text. This is real. The student also stated that Hatch sent him nude photos. However, the student advised the officer they were sent in vanish mode, so they would apparently disappear after you look at them. The student also tells the officer that a year prior to him reporting all this, that Hatch went to his house late at night where they met in the driveway. He said Hatch had him sit in the car and rubbed his penis. They made out and all that stuff, but they didn't have sex. But in a really shocking twist, he tells the officer that Hatch's infant child was in the car when she went to his house that night. So the officer, like in all the other cases, he's going to reach out to Hatch. And Hatch admits to talking to the student through Instagram Messenger. But when the officer digs deeper and he starts asking her questions about their physical relationship, she decided to answer nothing more without a lawyer. She lawyers up. She did admit to giving the student $500 to $600 over the course of a year, but stated that she had heard a rumor about him, that he was kind of dangerous, and she was afraid of the victim, which she says is why she kept giving him money. That was her justification for it. Obviously, total bullshit, but whatever. So police, they take possession of the student's phone, and they do what is known as a forensic search of that phone. And guess what? They are able to recover a nude photo of Hatch on the student's phone. And at that point, Hatch is indeed arrested for one count of solicitation of a minor, which is a felony. So Hatch bails out the next day. And this one, though tied up in court, currently is set to go on trial in 2025. And I'll definitely keep you updated as things come out in that trial. Hatch is facing 7 to 10 years in prison. And lastly, let's go to Maryland and a really unbelievable story of a teacher who a middle school student claims he had sex with over 20 times when he was just 14 years old. So Melissa Curtis, who is 31 years old, she turns herself in to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office after these allegations surface. So this case is a little bit different. Melissa turns herself in on November 7th of 2023. But these allegations actually go way back to 2015, when at the time, the victim was an 8th grade student at Montgomery Village High School in Maryland. So let me explain this. The victim originally speaks with police on October 5th of 2023, and he claims that between January and May of 2015, when he was 14, so he's now an adult when he's talking to the police, he says that Melissa Curtis and him had sex over 20 times. At the time of these incidents, Melissa Curtis was 22 and had been a teacher for approximately 2 years. So the victim discloses several incidents in which Melissa Curtis sexually abused him, allegedly, when he was in 8th grade, including saying that Curtis performed oral sex on him while the two were in a classroom at the middle school. He said that Curtis had sexual intercourse with him twice at her mother's residence. He said that Curtis provided him with alcohol and marijuana and encouraged him to perform oral sex on her many times. He said that Curtis had sexual intercourse with him at his residence in Montgomery County, Maryland. And he even mentioned a time where Curtis touched his penis with her feet while they were watching a movie at a theater in Maryland. Now, as a result, Curtis gets arrested under a slew of charges, including 1 count of sexual abuse of a minor, 4 counts of 3rd-degree sexual assault, and 3 counts of 4th-degree sexual assault. Now, initially, she gets held without bond. However, eventually she does get a bond. It's set at $50,000. She bonds out, awaiting her trial, and it's discovered in 2023 that she was a teacher still when she was arrested. So at this time, she was working at a charter school in an area. Now, of course, conditions of her bond, she wasn't allowed to have unsupervised contact with minors, and she had to stay away from all schools and was under the supervision of the pretrial supervision unit, meaning she had to quit her job. Now, I don't know why it took 8 years for this student to report this. I can't really answer that. But keep in mind, many of these cases never get reported, especially when it's a female teacher and a male student. But regardless, the time frame, I think, played a major role in the really unbelievable deal that I'm about to tell you Melissa Curtis got. So Melissa Curtis pleaded guilty after working out a deal with prosecutors, and she gets sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sounds about right, you may be thinking, but not so fast. Of that 30 years, hold on to your ass for this one, all but 12 months were suspended. That's right. After having sex, allegedly, with an 8th grader 20 times, which she pleaded guilty to, Melissa Curtis gets, at the end of the day, 1 year in jail and 5 years probation. What the fuck is going on in Maryland? Now, I will say, the prosecutors probably knew and recognized that the length of time that had passed since these incidents occurred, they probably had a really tough case to make, to say the least. I mean, they had a total lack of physical evidence. There were not text, pictures, etc. that we talk about when I cover these bad teachers cases. They just really, at the end of the day, had nothing outside of the student saying this occurred and Melissa Curtis denying it until she ended up cutting a deal. So in all honesty, I'm not so sure they would have won this case had it went to trial. And I'm sure that's what they were thinking. They would have been rolling the dice big time. At least she did get some jail time. Blew my mind. 30-year sentence, 29 years suspended. Wow. So that's it for today. Check out the Patreon. I'm going to load up some interesting files from today's episode, a bunch of pictures, a bunch of information. And a bonus episode is headed your way in the next week for all the Patreon members. It's a Patreon-only bonus episode, so look for that. And another Murdaugh series is headed your way tomorrow, so check that out. And until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.